Have you ever wondered, what if Adam wasn't the first? What if the earth had already been inhabited by other beings long before God ever formed man from the dust? Ancient texts, forgotten scriptures, and even certain verses in the Bible suggest something far more mysterious about the world's beginning. You are about to dive into one of the most shocking and hidden truths of creation. Stay with me until the end, because this may completely reshape how you see the origin of life, the fall of angels, and the purpose of mankind. And before we dive deeper, tell me in the comments, have you ever questioned what came before Adam? Your answer might unlock something for someone else. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who's ready to see beyond the beginning. Let's discover the truth together. Genesis begins with the words, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." But something strange happens immediately after. Verse 2 says, "The earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep." Why would a perfect God create something chaotic, empty, and submerged in darkness? Could it be that something happened between verse 1 and 2? A rebellion, a destruction, a judgment. This mysterious gap is the key to understanding the lost world that came before Adam. Many theologians refer to this as the gap theory, the belief that there was an ancient world, perhaps even a civilization, that existed and was wiped out before the 6 days of creation. Clues appear in verses that speak of the earth being laid waste or turned into a desolation. Jeremiah 4:23-26, for instance, describes a vision of the earth as formless and empty, with no man, no birds, and all cities broken down by the wrath of the Lord. But here's the twist. Jeremiah lived thousands of years after Adam. So what exactly was he seeing? Some believe Jeremiah was having a vision of the pre-Adamic world, a world that was judged and destroyed, leaving behind a ruined earth that God would later reform during the Genesis creation. If true, this could explain why Lucifer, already fallen, appears as the serpent in Eden. It would also shed light on the phrase, "replenish the earth," in Genesis 1:28, which implies a restoration, not a beginning. Could the creation of Adam have been the start of a new divine project, rising from the ashes of a fallen order? To understand what may have existed before Adam, we must go beyond Genesis and explore other ancient writings, texts like the Book of Enoch, the Apocalypse of Moses, and even ancient Jewish traditions that survived outside the canon. These writings speak of heavenly beings descending to earth, of watchers who defied their orders, and of judgments that came before humanity. Were these the first inhabitants of the earth, spiritual entities sent on divine missions, or rebels who corrupted what once was holy? The Book of Enoch describes a group of angels called the Watchers, assigned to observe the earth. But instead of merely watching, they descended, lusted after human women, and gave birth to giants, the Nephilim. But here's the deeper mystery. Some scholars suggest this rebellion didn't begin with humans. It began before humans existed at all. Could it be that the Watchers first interacted with other beings, pre-Adamic creatures, and were already falling before Adam's creation? The ancient earth, before Adam, may have been filled with non-human life, intelligent, spiritual, and perhaps even organized. Isaiah 45:18 says, "God did not create the earth to be empty, but formed it to be inhabited." If it was created to be inhabited, who lived in it before man? This supports the idea that something was here, something that fell into ruin. Some believe that these were angelic kingdoms, perhaps even ruled by Lucifer himself before his rebellion. This brings us to one of the boldest ideas, that Lucifer, before he became the adversary, was once a ruler on earth. Ezekiel 28 describes a being in Eden, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty, who walked among the stones of fire until iniquity was found in him. This doesn't match Adam. It matches a heavenly being with dominion. Could this have been Lucifer's original assignment? Was Earth once his kingdom and the ruins left behind, the very ground upon which Adam would later be formed? If Lucifer once ruled the earth, his rebellion may not have begun in heaven, but here, on this very planet. The fall, then, was not only vertical, from heaven to earth, but also territorial, from a throne of glory to a place of desolation. Revelation 12 speaks of a great war in heaven and a dragon being cast down. But what if this war had roots in a cosmic betrayal that began during Lucifer's earthly reign? A reign that was erased, but not forgotten. This theory reframes the fall of man. In Genesis, Satan is already fallen, already cursed, already scheming. There is no origin story for his rebellion because it had already happened. If the earth was his former domain, then Eden was not just a paradise, it was a divine invasion. God was reclaiming territory. And Adam? He wasn't just the first man, he was a replacement, a new image-bearer to stand where another being once ruled and failed. This would explain Satan's obsession with humanity, and especially with corrupting God's creation. It's not just rebellion, it's revenge. The serpent in the garden wasn't merely tempting Eve. He was trying to infect the new creation with the same poison that had doomed the old one. He remembered a time when earth was his. Now he watched as another was placed where he used to stand. And that, perhaps, is the deepest root of spiritual warfare. The bitterness of a former prince, watching his kingdom rebuilt without him. But what if remnants of that former kingdom still linger? The Bible often refers to deep places, the abyss, the pit, locations where beings are confined or hidden. Jude 1:6 says that angels who did not keep their domain are bound in everlasting chains under darkness. This hints that the earth is not just the stage of history, but also a prison, a battlefield, and a vault of ancient judgments. A forgotten world may still echo beneath our feet. There are even stranger clues. In Job 38:4-7, God asks Job, "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth, when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy?" This moment, before Adam, was witnessed by celestial beings. The earth's foundation wasn't secret, it was a cosmic event, celebrated by an audience that predates humanity. So who were these sons of God? And why were they so invested in a world that had not yet seen its first man? Some interpretations suggest that those sons of God were angelic authorities, watching as the earth was rebuilt after devastation. Perhaps they had seen its previous form, its destruction, and now its rebirth. Could this also explain their later decision to descend and interfere with humanity, not out of curiosity, but from nostalgia, jealousy, or a desperate attempt to reclaim what was once theirs? This theory also casts a new light on the Nephilim, the giants of Genesis 6. If angels mated with humans, producing powerful offspring, maybe they were trying to create a hybrid race to rival mankind. But what if the Nephilim weren't the first attempt? What if beings like them had existed before Adam, and their existence was one of the reasons the world had to be wiped clean? The flood wasn't the first cleansing, just the most recent. The deeper we go, the clearer it becomes. Adam's creation was not the beginning. It was a restart, a spiritual reset after cosmic rebellion. God didn't just shape a man, he declared a new era. This also explains why the enemy fights so hard to distort humanity. We were created to take the place of something fallen, to carry an image that once belonged to another realm. And that ancient realm still echoes in myths, in ruins, and in scriptures most have never read. Ancient civilizations left behind stories that strangely mirror the biblical narrative, yet without Adam, Eve, or Israel. The Sumerians spoke of sky gods descending to earth, the Egyptians of beings of light ruling before pharaohs, and the Greeks of titans cast down after a celestial war. What if these aren't just myths, but fragmented memories of a pre-Adamic era, distorted recollections of a time when celestial beings walked among the ruins of a former world? The Book of Enoch goes even further. It not only names the fallen angels, it gives their ranks, their crimes, and their punishment. It says the earth cried out because of them, that their corruption wasn't just spiritual, but biological, technological, and moral. They introduced forbidden knowledge, alchemy, weapons, enchantments. Could this explain the sudden rise of advanced knowledge in ancient ruins, long before Adam's children built cities? In this view, the story of Adam and Eve takes on new dimensions. The garden wasn't just paradise, it was a protected zone, a new beginning shielded from the echoes of a ruined world. That's why there was a cherub with a flaming sword placed at the entrance. Eden wasn't lost, it was sealed, not only to keep man out, but to keep something else from getting in again. And the serpent? It wasn't a simple animal. Revelation 12 calls it the ancient serpent, called the devil and Satan. But if Eden was created for Adam and Satan was already fallen, how did he get there so fast? Because he had already been on earth, waiting, watching, maybe even claiming that land as his own. The temptation of man was not random, it was an act of war. A declaration that the ancient enemy would not surrender his former domain without a fight. From this angle, the Bible becomes more than a record of beginnings. It becomes the account of a cosmic restoration. The chaos in Genesis 1:2 wasn't just the absence of form, it was the residue of divine judgment. Light didn't just enter darkness, it confronted it. God's voice when he said, "Let there be light," may have been more than a creative act. It was a declaration of order over a realm previously governed by rebellion. And what if mankind was God's response to that rebellion? Not just a new creation, but a replacement authority. Made in God's image, given dominion over the earth. A direct threat to the memory of what had come before. That would explain why Satan didn't wait. He struck fast because he saw the purpose of Adam and Eve. They weren't just innocent beings in a garden. They were the restorers of what had been lost. And so the war continues, not in heaven alone, but here among us. Every soul born into this world steps onto a battleground layered with ancient history. A spiritual war that predates humanity but now uses humanity as its central piece. When we speak of salvation, of redemption, of prophecy, we are speaking of the continuation of a plan that began long before Adam opened his eyes. A divine strategy to reclaim Earth from its original corruption. But most will never hear this. Most will read Genesis and see only a beginning, never realizing that they're standing on a battlefield filled with echoes. The pit isn't just beneath the earth, it's beneath our understanding. To awaken to this truth is to realize that you are not a random accident. You are part of a mission that was set in motion to finish what others failed to accomplish. And that mission is still unfolding. The more we understand this hidden past, the more we realize why Jesus is called the second Adam. He didn't come only to fix man's sin. He came to reclaim what was lost in the first creation. And even before it, his victory on the cross didn't just redeem us, it struck at the heart of the ancient rebellion, restoring the authority that had been usurped long ago. That's why the enemy trembles at his name, because Christ didn't just defeat death. He erased the legacy of a fallen kingdom. In Romans 8, Paul writes that all creation groans, waiting for the sons of God to be revealed. What is creation waiting for, if not the restoration of what was lost before mankind even existed? This groaning isn't just about sin. It's about a memory buried in the earth itself, a longing for the divine order to return. Every war, every deception, every spiritual attack traces back to this ancient fracture. We were never meant to live in ignorance. The scriptures are full of coded messages, prophetic visions, and divine whispers pointing to this truth. God left clues scattered like sparks, waiting to ignite those bold enough to seek. And when you begin to see it, really see it, you realize that the Bible is not just a spiritual book. It is a divine map, chronicling not just what happened, but what was destroyed, what will be restored, and who we really are. You were born into a world with layers of forgotten history, not by accident, but because God chose this generation to uncover what others refused to see. We are living in the days where hidden things are being revealed, and as prophecy unfolds before our eyes, the veil that once separated heaven from earth is thinning. The time to awaken is now. Because what happened before Adam is about to repeat. The signs are everywhere. Ancient texts resurfacing, spiritual hunger growing, hidden knowledge being exposed. We're not just uncovering the past, we're being prepared for the future. Return of divine order, because what began before Adam was never truly erased, it was only paused. And now the final chapters are being written, not by angels, not by ancient kings, but by you, by us. That's why it matters. That's why these truths can't remain buried. The same way Adam was placed in Eden to cultivate and guard, you were placed in this time to awaken, discern, and prepare. The war before Adam shaped the world you now live in. But the war after Adam, the one still happening, is where your role begins. You are not just a believer, you are a participant in divine history. So the next time you read Genesis, don't just look at what begins, look at what came before. Read between the lines, ask the questions no one wants to ask. What happened before the beginning? Who ruled before the fall? Because when you understand that, the entire Bible transforms from a story of man into a story of restoration, judgment, and glory waiting to return. If this message spoke to your spirit, don't keep it to yourself. Type Amen in the comments as a sign that you are awake and ready for what's to come. Subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and share this revelation with someone who needs to see beyond the beginning. Truth is rising, and you are part of it.